We think you should know that Imperfect Heroes podcast is a production of Little Hearts Academy USA.
Welcome, heroes and heroines, to episode 121 of Imperfect Heroes, Insights into Parenting, the perfect podcast for imperfect parents looking to find joy in their experience of raising children in an imperfect world. And I'm your host, DJ Stutz. Welcome back to another episode of Imperfect Heroes. I am thrilled to share some exciting news with you. It's getting to be that time of year, and you might just be in the market for an amazing holiday gift or a perfect classroom addition. Well, I've got you covered. My new book, Roman is Bigger, is a heartwarming tale that offers some essential life lessons. In this book, Roman discovers the profound impact of words on our emotions and our relationships. Roman learns that the right words not only make him feel better, but also helps others to understand him better. This lesson in communication and empathy is invaluable for children and parents. Roman is Bigger isn't just a book. It's a key to strengthening bonds and building character. Perfect for Christmas, Hanukkah, or any special occasion. And it's available now on Amazon. Guess what? The link is in the show notes. So don't miss this chance to nurture your child's emotional growth. Get Roman is Bigger today and start off on a touching literary journey that will inspire your child's soul. So today we have this truly exceptional guest joining us. Her name is Jena Ponti Jauchius, who is an internationally recognized landscape architect and a nature play expert. And for over 2 days, Jena has been designing nature-based play, learning, and therapeutic environments for children of all abilities and diversities. And she's not only a designer, but she's also a dedicated teacher who educates early childhood professionals, other educators, and parents on creating sensory-rich, natural play and learning spaces to nurture young minds, bodies, and spirits. And in today's episode, we go on a journey through the world of the 7 senses. Oh yeah, you heard me right, 7 senses. She shares a wealth of insights and practical tips for parents, helping them harness the power of the great outdoors to inspire their kids and support their holistic development. And we explore how children can develop all 7 of those senses as they grow and learn in their natural environment. And that's not all. Jena has a fantastic free gift for our audience. So be sure to check out the end of the episode to get in on the PDF download that she is generously offering to help you on your parenting journey. So whether you're a seasoned pro or a brand new parent, this episode is bound to provide valuable wisdom and inspiration for you. Let's dive into the world of nature play and sensory development with Jena Ponti Jauchius. There's so much to learn, so let's get started. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us at Imperfect Heroes podcast. And if you are listening to us on the podcast, I want to let you know that we are also live with the video on YouTube, and we also post it on Rumble. So on Rumble, the channel is Imperfect Heroes. On YouTube, it's Little Hearts Academy USA, and that's my business side of things. And so you can always find lots of information there. And so I hope that you'll take a minute to hit the follow button, the like button, leave a comment, all the things. And we can reach more families and more parents that way. And so I hope you'll think about that and see our beautiful faces as we talk about a great topic. And it's something that I have always felt very strongly about, is that children learn so much outside. And in fact, I would take my classes outside every chance I got. And we'd find a little place away from the playground, which is being used pretty much all day. But we could find different grass places at the front of the school, side of the school, and investigate and learn. And
even just reading a story outside is so enchanting and exciting, and the kids really love the experience. So today I have with me, she is an expert, she is amazing, and her name is Jena Ponti Jauchius,
That's right.
right?
Yeah. Good
We
job.
just talked about it, and I'm like, but anyway, Jenna is an expert at creating sensory rich outdoor spaces. And the thing for us to remember is it's not just for schools, it's not just teachers who need to do that. Parents, please take whatever you have, whether it's a balcony on an apartment or a public area at a complex or your own backyard, and look at the things that you can do to make that more enriching and engaging and inviting for our kids. So, Jenna, it's so good to see you. Talk to us a little bit about what you do. And
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, DJ. I'm so honored to be here having a conversation with you. So your audience knows my background is I'm a landscape architect and nature play expert. And for 23 years now, I've been designing children's outdoor play, learning, and therapeutic environments. And just in the last probably 4 years, I've shifted gears. So now, rather than doing just design work, I actually teach folks, whether they're early childhood professionals, educators, or parents, how to create sensory rich natural play and learning environments wherever their kids are. So at home,
right.
at school, at their learning center, wherever it is. Yeah. And so I really come at things from a sensory approach because that is really getting down to the foundational level of how kids experience the world and how they learn and how they play and how they connect, whether it's with you or other adults, connecting with their peers and siblings, connecting with nature, and connecting with
Mhm.
themselves. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. They start learning about their place in the world when they
Yeah.
go out into the world, right? And
Exactly.
they're not doing it all VR or on screens or whatever. They're
Yeah.
actually participating, and that's
Yep.
the best place for them to learn. I feel
Yeah.
like you should have a show like on HGTV or Magnolia or one of those, and outdoor spaces or
Yes, please.
yeah, wouldn't that be great? But I think
Yeah.
if there's anything out there that's really addressing that, and then the sensories connecting it to our
Yeah.
sensories and the
Yeah.
senses that we have.
Yeah.
And you talked about something about there are seven senses. And so why don't you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So people always think or tend to think that kind of starts and stops at the classic five senses, right? Sight, touch,
Hmm.
taste, smell, and sound. And we are so familiar with those, but there are actually more physical senses that we all have, that children have, that are equally important in our ability to navigate our environments and to thrive in our daily lives. And so there are two more, in addition to those five, there are two more that I always talk about. And one is our vestibular system, and that is located in our inner ear. And it has to do with where our understanding where we're at relative to gravity. So, are we upside down? Are we right side up? Or are we sideways? And so, for kids, the activities that stimulate the vestibular system are like swinging or spinning,
Mm.
rolling, running, walking, crawling, all of those big movement, climbing, balancing, those big movement
Yeah,
activities where they're really
yeah,
kind of testing where they are relative to the gravitational pull. And it's really important for kids to get the right type of vestibular stimulation and the right intensity because they all
yeah.
need different levels. And I can talk about that in a minute because it helps give kids a number of things, including good body confidence, so that they can move in all these big and different ways. And then the seventh system I talk about is our proprioceptive system or proprioception. It's a big word. This one's really fascinating because of the seven, it's the only one that's fully internal. It doesn't
Mm.
require any external outside information to have it work properly. And so this is our body awareness system where it tells us where like our limbs are at relative to our core or the rest of us, or where our bodies are at relative to the things around us. And so
Okay.
for a child, this might mean, a school age child, they're going into their school, they're walking the hallways, they're navigating, turning corners, going into their classroom, walking around the different desks to find their seat and sit down. That is driven by their proprioceptive system. The other thing it has to do with is the use of force or pressure to do an activity. And so like coloring with a crayon, you have to use a certain amount of force. If you use too much,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to break. And so the example I give there is I'm thirsty, there's a paper cup of water in front of me. And so it's my proprioceptive system, my brain, that communicates to my joints and ligaments and muscles all the way down to my fingertips how much pressure my fingers need to pick up that paper cup of water without
Wow,
squishing it
yeah.
or without letting it fall through my fingers. And so proprioceptive activities can be really ranging from big body movements, climbing, balancing, hopping, those sorts of things, to smaller movements like using garden tools or tying your shoes or even pushing a wheelbarrow, pulling a wagon sort of thing. So there's a lot of activities that are play and learning based that can
Yeah.
really give kids lots of stimulation and information and input that will really feed all 7 sensory systems, which in turn, very importantly, balances their nervous system.
That is so amazing. And so now I start thinking back on, I knew more about without the words. So your connection with gravity and how your body moves, it's what makes us dizzy when we spin, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
and it's what helps us to have that sense of righting ourselves and then it gives us confidence, I think, when we
Yeah.
feel confident that we know exactly where we are and how we fit in, so we're not falling constantly,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
tripping. The other one, though, I think about, and you mentioned crayons, because we used to teach that in kindergarten so much. Crayons are fantastic, parents,
Mhm.
but it's hard to get off the wall. But so use the right paint. But but they can learn in kindergarten if you do a crayon very lightly, it's a lighter color. But if you want a darker shade, you can
Sure.
put more pressure on it and
Sure.
you get that dark. Of course, you don't want enough that it's going to break. And so you're teaching them all these different levels, and there's all different
Yeah.
levels of pressure, right?
Absolutely.
That
Yep.
you can use for that.
Yep.
And so that is amazing. And so when we're looking at our outdoor areas, right, we
Yeah.
want to look at each sense, all 7,
Hmm.
and how are they going to address those? So, what are some of the things that you do as you're looking at an area? Let's take a really small area because some
Okay.
people live maybe in an apartment and all they've
Sure.
got is a balcony.
Yeah.
And so, what
Yeah.
are some things that we can do there?
Okay. Well, so what I would tell parents who are working with a balcony space is since the space is so small, you're going to be really intentional about what experiences and activities you're going to provide for them. And so you want it to be as irresistible as possible, right? Get them off their screens,
Hmm.
get them outside. And so
Right?
you really have to look at what do your kids love to do? What can they do and get lost in and spend hours focused on this thing? And
Hmm.
then once you have that in mind, how can you bring that and make it suitable to an outdoor setting? So there are a lot of kids who really love to play with Legos, right? So loose
Hmm.
parts play, that sort of thing. It's
There's
really
a bunch of
easy to take.
adults who do too.
Yeah, yeah. It's really
Yeah.
easy to take something like that outside. You've got some bins, you've got some shelves, and just a comfortable place to sit and play. Maybe you need to add a little shade to it. So that's
Hmm.
something, and you can create a natural loose parts kit. You don't have to use Legos and Matchbox cars.
Hmm.
You can collect branches and stones and leaves and feathers and flowers and seed pods and whatever it is when you're out on a walk or if you're at the beach, just collect a few
Hmm.
loose parts, right? Natural materials that the kids can then have their own loose parts kit at home
Yeah. Yeah.
and use it outside. And then it's a whole different sensory experience than using plastic or other manufactured toys. It gives them it's multi-sensory. Loose parts can hit all 7 senses, especially the one it may not hit might be taste, but hey, kids like to taste most things, so I always throw that
Let
one in
me
there.
lick that pine cone.
Exactly.
And they do.
Exactly. They do. They do.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Well,
Yep.
they want to see what a rock looks like wet. They're gonna lick it, right? So
Right.
that's all 7 senses. And so really with something that's very simple and very inexpensive, you can feed your
Hmm.
child's nervous system in really profound ways. And so that would be one example for a balcony situation. But I would say no matter what space you're working in, you want to start with what your kids love to do and translate that to making it suitable for outdoor situations.
Right. So there's so many things that you can do. And I'll tell you that I'm also certified to be a director of a large childcare.
Yeah,
And you get all these certificates. Oh, I'll certify for that. But
sure.
one of the things is that, and even in kindergarten, we were required to have nature-based play bins. And so we had to have bins with feathers and rocks and pine cones and branches or sticks or whatever. And so if you are a parent and you are maybe considering a childcare center, that's one of the things you can look at is how do you bring that into the classroom? And then how do you spend their outside time?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sensory bins are amazing. They're good for all kids, but
Hmm.
they're particularly useful for kids experiencing neurodiversity, like a child who might have
Hmm.
tactile defensiveness. Maybe they don't like to touch a lot of things, or like the tag on their shirt really bugs them. And so they're really hesitant and uncomfortable about touching new things. And so something
Hmm.
like a sensory bin can allow them to explore. You can put in the things that you know they like to interact with, but then add a few things
Hmm.
that push the boundaries and push that comfort bubble for them to try and touch new, because the world is full of things that
Yeah.
may be uncomfortable. And so if they can develop some of those coping skills and learn to expand their comfort zones and that sort of thing, it's just going to help them in their daily life and as they grow up into
Hmm.
adults.
Yeah. So I have a grandson that is on the high level of the spectrum. He can make friends and stuff, but he'll have friends over playing and he'll be off in the dirt, lying in the dirt. So his sensory is that dirt piece, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
just the funniest thing, you'll see his friends on one side of the backyard playing, and they're still lying in the dirt, just having a good time. I think you're so right in understanding what brings them joy, what calms them down, what engages them, all of those pieces, and then incorporating that into whatever it is that you have
Yeah,
to
yeah,
play.
absolutely.
And then allowing that. I know some parents like to see their son lying in the dirt and just like, they'd be like, ah, he's gonna get dirty. Yep, he is.
Yeah.
He's a
Mm-hmm.
7-year-old boy and he gets to get dirty.
That's right. And
Yeah.
you know, have you heard of the concept of grounding or earthing?
Talk to me about that.
So I've known about this for a long time. I just finished a really fascinating book written by a cardiologist called Grounding. So the earth has a frequency and it gives off energy. And so
Right.
we as electrical beings will pick up that energy, and basically the earth will recharge us by bare feet on the ground or laying on the ground, sitting on the
Yes.
ground or leaning against a tree. We actually take
Hmm.
in the earth's energy and it recharges our system. And it's actually the fastest way to balance one's nervous system. And that might be
Wow.
what he's
Yeah.
doing. That might be what he's
Yeah,
doing. It just feels good.
it
Hmm.
does. They live close to Lake Tahoe. They're in Reno and South
Okay.
Reno. So they're up at Lake Tahoe like several times a week. And that's him. He's the one that's digging down and feeling the warmth of the sand. He'll
Yeah.
talk about that warmth. And do you need a blanket, buddy? No, I'm good. He's
Yeah.
just laying on it. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I think being aware of that and then not stopping our children from doing those activities that are going
Yeah.
to help them with their balance and their
Yeah.
equilibrium and their spatial awareness. How
Yep.
close am I to this person or that desk or whatever it is?
Yeah.
But that takes them to reaching out, challenging themselves. I've seen parents who their kindergartner is walking along out in the parking lot, and you have those cement
Oh,
things,
the little curb stops. Hmm.
curb stops, yeah. And the kids will be walking along on that, doing their balance thing. And I'm thinking, yeah, buddy. And they're like, oh, you're gonna fall, get off there.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's
I
probably
hear you.
okay. Yeah, or
I hear you.
nobody, don't climb trees.
Oh, that's one of my favorite things.
I know. I
Yeah.
know. I mean, even
Yeah.
as old and fat as I am, I'll go out to my grandkids' place. My son has this beautiful pine tree that is just awesome for climbing. And it's
Mm.
just got these perfectly spaced branches. And the kids will get like 20, 25
Oh
feet up
my.
in the air. I mean, really high. And they're like, Nana, come. My grandkids call me Nana. And so, yeah, I'll climb up with them. And my son's like, you're going to kill yourself. Hopefully. What a way to go.
Oh,
But
well, my goodness, it feels good to take those sort of risks,
yes,
right? Yeah. And
Yes,
they need to.
they
They
need
need
to.
to.
Hmm.
They need to.
Hmm.
The world can be a very challenging place, and it
Hmm.
requires all of us to engage with it at different levels throughout our lives. And if kids can really be given the gift of the time and the opportunity and the space to really challenge themselves and to take what
Hmm.
they see as risk, that's giving them a huge gift now and into adulthood. And they definitely aren't, with the mentality our society is in now, they definitely don't get a fraction of the risk-taking opportunities because, and children naturally will kind of tailor their perceived sense of risk. They might tone it down based on what they are perceiving.
Hmm.
There are, yes, those kids that will always find the highest thing to jump off of, right? Always.
Yep.
But for the most part, most kids will really tailor their, what's the word I'm looking for? Just what they choose to do based on
Mm.
how risky they see the environment. And so
Right.
it's really good to allow them to really challenge themselves mentally, emotionally, socially, physically.
Mhm.
So important.
I agree. At the last school I taught at before I retired, we had our playground, and then there was a grass area. So the school fields were at a kind of a higher level, but it was a sloping. It wasn't a steep, it was a sloping thing. And the kindergartners loved going out there and just rolling down that hill. And
Yeah.
so the two other teachers that I worked with, they were like, oh, they're gonna get dirty. They turn, and I'm like, you turned into a grass monster. That's amazing. I don't know, but they'd be all worried, and the kids would get up and they'd be a little like, woo. I'm like, can you do that again?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think giving them those, like, do you have an inclined area that they can roll down?
Sure.
And if it's not with grass on it, what are some things you can roll down and get a ball, roll
Sure.
it down, see how far it'll go or
Yeah.
whatever. But they're learning all of those seven senses when they're out
Yeah.
there. Well,
Yep.
and so, yeah, I just love that. So, parents, let your kids take some risks, and
Yeah.
a boo-boo here and there is okay.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
what Band-Aids are for.
What are the little ways that you can start saying yes to their activities and stop saying no, no,
Yes.
no, don't do that. Start saying
Hmm.
yes. What are like expand your comfort zone? We were just talking about comfort zones. How can you expand your comfort
Yeah,
zone? It'll benefit your kids.
you're so right. You're so right. Okay, so let's move on. Let's say you live in a apartment, but maybe you have a park close by. So you're
Mhm.
not the one designing it, but
Sure.
you're going to look at it and maybe see what opportunities are there at the park that you can take advantage of. Do you
Yeah.
have any advice for us there?
Most parks offer quite a bit for the seven senses. Grass for running and rolling and trees, shade, that's a shady place to have a picnic.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a playground. The traditional American playgrounds are really lacking for like a full sensory experience and extremely lacking for naturalness. So I would say use those as kind of a tool to fill in some of those gaps, like, the swings and that sort of thing. We definitely want kids
Mm-hmm.
to be swinging and doing those things as much as possible. They're great for climbing, but maybe they're an area that has some boulders that they could play around on. Maybe there's
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
plantings that they can interact with and, smell some of the flowers or whatever. So yeah, I mean it's really about looking through a different lens when you're
Mm-hmm.
looking at your children's daily environments and looking through that sensory lens, and you'll really start to see value that isn't there on the surface on when what first meets the eye. When you really start looking and watching your kids interact with their
Mm-hmm.
environments, you will start to appreciate the sensory value, the multisensory value of any place that they're in, and you'll also likely start to notice where there might be gaps. And so
Right.
if you see some gaps, how can you then fill it? Like an example might be a backyard space has a play structure and maybe a swing set and some plantings, but there's no edible garden space. And if you don't
Mm.
want to do an edible garden space, which I think are one of the most brilliant play and learning features for kids, maybe
Yeah.
you at least put a picnic table out there so you can have meals outside.
Yeah,
And,
for
and
sure.
so just you'll start to notice what the gaps might be, especially if you're in tune, because most parents are very in tune with their kids' needs. You'll start to see what might be lacking in their daily experience when you think about each of the seven senses.
Yeah, and that's so valuable. And I love that you brought up the edible garden space too. I remember when my oldest daughter was just a little teeny weeny, and we just outside of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, up
Oh, yeah.
kind of by,
That's like my
okay.
neighborhood. Hmm.
Oh, there you are. Well, my
Yeah.
son, we were in Post Falls,
Okay.
and my son was born at Coeur d'Alene, Kootenai County.
Uh-huh.
And anyway, it was very forested, of course,
Yeah.
and all of that. And we had a strawberry patch that was
Yeah.
kind of behind the grass area.
Uh-huh.
And one day I went out there and she's just covered in red. And she's like 18 months old, but we let her out, and which is what you did back then. And I
You're right.
wish we still did. But she was just covered in red, and she had eaten probably most of the strawberries that were in that
Good
patch.
for her.
Yeah, we had some interesting bathroom experiences after that. But the funny thing was, we had a neighbor, and the neighbors weren't that close together, but we weren't that far either. Not city close, but,
Sure.
and when she'd gone through those, the next week she was over in the neighbor's yard eating all of their strawberries.
She knew them by their smell. Yeah.
Yeah, but she was willing to try, and she was like a great eater, though, generally,
Yeah.
because she had that adventurous spirit engaged by that opportunity to eat things that were
Yeah.
outside, our string beans
Yeah.
and eaten and our peas and stuff. But I
Hmm.
didn't get after her for that. Well, we had to talk about, that she was only 18 months old. So we were like, no, that's Laura's yard. And they were very cool about it. But having that sense of adventure,
Yeah.
and especially with food,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so she was just a great eater growing up. And that I think was a big part of it. And
Hmm.
understanding how joy comes from nature and not so much of the sugar stuff.
Yes.
Her
Yeah.
adventure wasn't the candy as much as it was going out and
Yeah.
and
Grazing. Hmm.
yeah, and
Good for
grazing.
her.
Yeah. 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 So what a fun thing. So I would really encourage our parents to, if you have a chance, and even if you're on a balcony, you could do a tomato plant
Oh, yeah. Cherry
out
tomatoes.
there.
Yep.
Yeah. I
You could
mean,
do vining
this,
cucumber. Hmm.
yeah, there's all kinds of opportunities that are out there if you really sit down and look at what are the possibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. I'm wondering about now maybe a average sized backyard. Now we're
Hmm.
getting a little more space, right?
Yeah.
And so that's when you start getting into the home swing set. I know my mom never liked us to have a sandbox because of cats.
Yeah.
Yeah. But now they
That's
have
common.
covers. You
They
can
do.
cover
Yeah.
it or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I've
there's
seen
ways to work
sandbox.
that.
I've seen successful sand play in those big round horse troughs. And then they
Oh,
just put a
yeah.
tarp over it and then they use a couple logs for steps to get up into it. But it's
Yeah.
contained. They poke a few holes in it for drainage. And if
Hmm.
it's when the child is done with sand play, it can become a raised garden bed.
Sure
So
can.
yeah,
Yeah.
evolves.
Or a place for new chicks.
Yeah, or a big new sensory, like a huge sensory bin. Maybe you pile some leaves in there and
Oh, yeah.
that sort of thing. So yeah,
Yeah, all kinds of things. And
yeah,
so we're going to recycle things as our
yeah,
kids grow out of maybe that
yeah,
interest.
yep,
So sandbox isn't the big deal anymore. So now we're going to move it on to another useful purpose.
yep. That's tailored to them. So an example in my own garden, I've got a large yard, but I've made a corner of it into a kid sensory garden.
Oh, fun.
And we had a little mud kitchen area that I have 8-year-old twins now, and when the older twin was younger, that was like she loved that's what she loved to do. And now that she's a little older and she's kind of getting away from maybe the small kid mud kitchen
Hmm.
aesthetic, we're transitioning this space. Like the structures are still there, the water is still there, but we're moving the old accessories out and bringing in tools and making it a maker space. And so it's just evolving as my kids grow and their
Hmm.
developmental needs change and their interests change. It's
Yeah.
so easy. And that's one of the concerns I hear from parents a lot is like, well, my kids are only going to like this for a couple years and then what do I do? Well, the beautiful thing about natural play and learning is that the space can grow with them and evolve with them. And it just
Hmm.
sometimes is just a matter of changing out the accessories that you use, giving them
Yeah.
to maybe a neighbor who's got young kids and that sort of thing. That's a beautiful give and take, sharing.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, it's so easy to have your outdoor space evolve with your kids.
Exactly. And as you go out there, and I think well, I know that it's really important for your kids to have alone time outside
Yeah,
without you hovering over them. So it's important for
totally.
them to have that time. But it's also important for them to have some time with you out there and engaging with them and watching them. Well, what
Yeah.
are they playing with? What are they not playing with now? Oh, that used to be their favorite and they haven't touched it in over a week or 2 weeks or whatever,
Hmm.
you know?
Yep.
And
Yep.
so as you get watching, you're going to notice those things as to what they're interested in and how we can maneuver that. Water is a huge thing for
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
They dig it big time.
Yeah.
You can get a water table and have it outside. They've got some great ones for outside.
Hmm.
But what are some other ways that we can bring water into the environment for play?
Oh, I mean, the simplest is just a hose and a fun sprinkler or a watering can or a bucket, slip and slide sort of thing. I mean, you can do water play so easy. And if
Yeah.
you don't have a space to dedicate to like a water table or even
Hmm.
a fountain, if you have a little bit older kids, then something just where the hose and accessories or tools that they can play with the water in that space for the
Hmm.
time, and then maybe things
Hmm.
get put away when not in use. So I would say that would be the easiest way. I've been talking with my girls about how we want to include water in our sensory garden, and we've talked about kind of a fountain scenario. Granted, I have older kids, and you would maybe would want to
Hmm.
use a fountain for the younger kids. There's bird baths.
Yeah.
Again, with the younger kids, you'd have to worry about them maybe drinking the bird poop water. So you'd have to be kind of thinking about that. Is that right for your
Yeah.
space and your kids or not?
Yeah.
So those are the choices that you have to make. But yeah, I would say that. You know, my kids are so happy with a hose and a couple different watering
Mhm.
cans. They'll go out and water all the flowers. When their friends come over, that's what they want to do too. And the watering can is actually a really beautiful illustration of proprioception because if you have a child who needs children with neurodiversities tend to be hypersensitive or hyposensitive in one or more
Right.
senses at the same time. And so this would be an example of, I always say with kids, all kids, give them options for a range of intensity of sensory stimulation. And
Yeah.
so an example using the watering can and proprioception would be if you have a child who needs a lot of sensory, of proprioceptive stimulation, they really want to use their muscles, fill that watering can as much as they can hold, as much as they can carry,
Yes.
and that is giving
Yes.
their body a tremendous amount of information to go on. And if you have a child that gets too much, they're hypersensitive, they're getting too much stimulation already, they still want to use the watering can, maybe just fill it a little bit and do it over and over again so that they can just do
Hmm.
it a light version of that. And so that's just one of the ways to really not just have the sensory value of the space, but to really give depth and
Right.
make it really tailored and appropriate for
Hmm.
the kids that are in your care or your own kids.
Right. And I know when my kids were like just when they were just starting to walk, if we were watering the lawn in the backyard and it's a hot summer day, out we'd go. It didn't matter if we didn't have a pool, you know. You
Yeah.
just go out in the sprinklers and run. I
Yeah.
remember growing up in Los Angeles, so I'm the oldest of seven, and I have five brothers. And when my parents would water the lawn, we'd rush out there. We'd play tag on it,
Hmm.
and we had friends who had pools. We didn't have a pool, but you couldn't always go to a friend's house to chill on a
Yeah,
hot day.
totally.
So we would just go
Yeah.
and just play games and stuff. And so I think that for all ages, there's a water sensory piece, and even newborns when they're taking the bath, and their
Yes.
bath experience, you can calm a very upset baby very often. Nothing's
Yep.
100%, but very often you can calm an upset baby with a nice warm bath,
Right.
and soothing
Right.
sounds, and we're doing
Yep.
all those things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Another thing I think that is great for, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of it officially, but the pressure thing,
Oh,
the
proprioception.
pressure, there
Hmm.
you are. One of the things that we would do is take tubes, and they could be PVC, they could be metal, they could be wood, whatever, and you drill holes and then hang them.
Oh,
It's another use you can use for a swing set that isn't getting used much anymore.
aha.
And just
Hmm.
hang these. And then the kids could learn how, they'd have mallets and if I'm touching hard or soft or, how I can make different sounds with
Yeah.
by the pressure that I'm using on
Yeah.
that, and then it brings music outside as
Yeah.
well, and
Yeah.
creation and innovation and all of those things. But that was
Yeah.
a fun thing.
Yeah. So just to talk about that for a second and looking at that as a multi-sensory play and learning feature. So you've got sight because it's a structure, big structure,
Mm-hmm.
lines and
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing. Sound would be a big thing. Not so much taste, but definitely touch. What am I missing? Sight, touch, taste, smell.
Here,
Not so much smell, but like you said, the
sound.
vestibular and proprioception because they're walking
Mm-hmm.
around it and
Yeah.
they're using tools to make the sound and they're
Mm-hmm.
interacting with it. So it's really amazing because oftentimes when I talk about the seven senses, people get kind of overwhelmed thinking they have to do so much and they have to add all these things into their
Mm-hmm.
space. But in reality, the play and learning features are multi-sensory. And so what's the sensory stimulation that they offer?
Mm-hmm.
And what they don't offer, how can you give that in another way through another feature or activity?
Exactly.
So, yeah, you can actually do some really amazing spaces with a very small
Mm-hmm.
amount of space, but
Yeah.
really intentional features.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, as you were talking about that, I just had like some visions in my head of even if you were in an apartment with a balcony, they have the bars.
Yeah,
Hang things from between the bars and
yeah,
let them hit and make noise and stuff. That's not going to
yeah,
take up any room
totally.
on your
Yeah.
balcony, and yet it brings that piece in. So,
Yeah, if you have kiddos who are artistic, you could
hmm
weave jute twine like it's a
oh,
loom, and then when they go out on their walks and they bring back leaves and blades of grass and feathers, and they can weave those into this new outdoor loom that you've made for them.
I love that
I love
idea.
nature looms, and it changes with each time they go out and bring things back. It can change with the seasons. You can take it down
Yeah,
so easily and do something else. So
yeah,
yeah, it's really
yeah.
fun. These things don't have to be permanent, and it's kind of fun if they change out over time.
It
Gives
is.
different things to do.
Exactly. Exactly. And it engages them up. Sometimes they'll get bored.
Yeah,
It's the same old thing. But
yeah, sure.
so they like to change it up a little bit. Gosh,
Hmm.
so much great information. And I know that you've got some things that are available to our listeners. Do you want to talk to us
Yeah,
for a minute about what you've got
yeah,
available?
yeah. So the listeners can find me at my website, nisfornatureplay.com. I'm also at Facebook, so just search for N is for Nature Play. You'll find my business page. I'd also invite your listeners to join my private Facebook group called Sensory Rich Nature Play. And so if
Oh,
you just
cool.
look for that group, that's where kind of all the activity and the fun ideas are happening. But I do have some resources I put together on this because I've heard from a number of folks, including occupational therapists, that
Yeah.
this information's out there, but it's out there in so many places. And the work I've done is the first time it's all been put together in one package of information and resources.
Cool.
I have several ebooks. I have a on-demand course teaching folks how to build a sensory path, which is a path made out of different materials. It's really amazing.
Yeah.
So I teach folks how to build a path out of log cookies, which are slices of logs. Stone mosaic, I teach you how to build a really easy stone mosaic. And then, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the flagstone, how to install flagstone. So
Oh.
how do you make this into a path? And then I have an on-demand course that's available that talks about children's seven senses, how natural play and learning spaces, when they're sensory rich and intentionally done, how
Mm-hmm.
it feeds children's nervous system
Mm-hmm.
in all the different ways, and how to go about creating your own sensory rich nature play area, whether you're starting from scratch or whether you have an area already kind of going as a play and learning space, and
Yeah.
how you can enhance that space in all the right ways, tailored to your unique kids' needs and interests.
Yeah.
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 And so that's all. You can find all of that, all of my courses and ebooks from my website.
That sounds so fantastic. And we're going to have all of that information down in the show notes. So take the time to go down, peoples, to look at the show notes, click on some of the links. And while you're down there, be sure to click follow, leave a rating and review. 5 stars is the appropriate number of stars. And help us get our word out to more people and to grow our audience. Jena, I am so thrilled that you took the time to come and visit us today. You have so much great information. We could go on this for so much longer.
Yeah, totally.
But before we go, I have my standard question. We know that there are no perfect parents, but some parents just may seem a little more successful than others. How would you describe a successful parent?
I love that question. And I would say a successful parent is a parent who is present with their kids, who really makes the time to pay attention and to be with, to give their undivided attention as often as possible throughout the day. That goes so far in a child's self-confidence and empowerment and all of those wonderful value, their sense of self-value. That goes so far, and not to mention how much you will learn as being a careful observer of your child. You will learn so much from them because they're our greatest teachers. So I would say
Aren't
it's the
they?
power of presence. They are.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to learn about joy, watch a kid.
Yes, they do it right, don't they?
They do. I mean, think of it, curiosity, kindness, all of those feelings.
I
That's just
know.
amazing. Oh,
Yep.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So just go again and check her out. And Jenna, I love what you're doing. Thank you so much for all of this. And I'm sure we'll talk again sometime.
I hope so. I had so much fun, DJ. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
And if you want to learn more about Jena and how she can help your kids have more fun outside, just click on the links in the show notes. And don't forget the free download that she's offering to my listeners. It's called Nature Play Their Way, and the link is in the show notes. And while you're there, hit the follow button to make sure that you are getting in on the amazing episodes that we have each week. And if you like what you hear in today's podcast, be sure to rate and review and tell a friend. And you can do this whether you listen on Apple, Spotify, or some other platform, or if you just listen from the Imperfect Heroes podcast website. And so if you're on the website, just at the top, click on reviews, and then you click on leave a review, and it's that easy. So before we wrap up, though, I want to share an exciting opportunity with you. Starting November 13th, I am hosting the 5 Days of Service Challenge. The holidays aren't just about decorations and parties. It's about reaching out to others, teaching our children about the joy of giving, and creating meaningful experiences as a family. And this challenge is going to be a little different from our past challenges. Each day, we're going to work together to plan a service event that truly matters to your family. It's going to be designed by you and your kids, your spouse. You're going to work together to do something that is age and developmentally appropriate for the people who are in your family. And then on Thursday, we're going to put that plan into action, and we're going to follow up on Friday with a reflective session. So join us in spreading kindness and joy this holiday season. It's a chance to be someone's superhero or their special angel. Keep an eye on your email, and we can't wait to embark on this heartwarming journey with you and your loved ones. You can pre-register now, and guess what? The link is in the show notes. And of course, you can also find the link on my website, www.littleheartsacademyusa.com. And don't forget to check us out on YouTube and Rumble. And next week, my guest is Catherine Reed. I think that's such a perfect name for what she does, Reed. And we are talking about homeschooling. So if you're already homeschooling, or maybe you're just kind of thinking about it, this is a great episode for you. So check it out and see. And until next time, let's find joy in parenting.